a broad general question. It's in the minds of many people in the forefront, and that is, you have a catchy campaign slogan, reboot. So I want you to tell me specifically you want to reboot, rebuild, and rebalance. What would your initiative be?
Sure. The reboot side is education. I think that the Department of Education needs to be dismantled. I think that it needs to be localized, decentralized, and brought to the most local level. I think our prison system needs to be revamped. I think that we need to look at what we have as in regards to recidivism. It's not working. If it's not working, when I say reboot, the system needs to be taken out, the new system needs to be put in, and needs to be restarted. Collegially, right now, we are raising tuition at the term of, what, 40% in the past 4 years? We can't afford it. We simply can't afford it. When it comes to rebuild, it's rebuilding citizens. We need to start our own insurance pool. We need to collectively put together a plan that allows for us to not only stabilize our rates, but in the long term see that our rates go down. We can do this. We can do this by a collective effort of allowing ourselves to become the risk taker. And so therefore we can create a new quasi-governmental agency that would allow for us to begin to take that risk. We can take that risk and take into the consideration of the models that are out there. There's a group called Willis that uses 2 different modeling sources that we need. One is they use our construction code, our construction methodology, but they also use a predictive measure, which would help us. When I say rebalance, the truth of the matter is that Tallahassee is not too far to the right, it's not too far to the left, it's overweight with lobbyists and special interests. We can see that. We just had a bipartisan report released for billions of dollars that went through our state on Mercury. It's Kundra. It's handed out as political favoritism. So when I say reboot, there's systems that need to be taken down and replaced and restarted. When I say rebuild, citizens windstorm. When I say rebalance, we need to make sure that we represent the people.
This question is for Morgan also. And Molly, I'll get around to you on the next one, I promise. Don't say it. But since you're on a roll, you know, politics really is about bringing home the bacon. That's the bottom line. Who can get up there, who can get our fair share, or even more if we can, that makes you a successful politician. I'd be interested about what do you think skills and relationships and contacts do you have as opposed to, say, your opponent to bring home what's necessary for this county and Monroe County?
I think in regards to that, there's 3 very important things. Practical experience, relationships, and vision. Practical experience. As the mayor of the city of Key West, I was able to procure millions of dollars for the city through the most difficult of budget times in 2005 to 2009. Whether it was the Vandenberg that we sunk, whether it was the hardening of the Senior Citizens Plaza, whether it was baffles that we put on our fallouts, our outfalls. So understanding how the system works and be able to integrate the city's needs in Key West, Marathon, Key Largo, and the rest of the county and integrate it into the system, which goes back to relationships. As mayor, I hosted the Hispanic Caucus over 4 times. I've continued to build relationships in Tallahassee on both the Republican side and the Democratic side, and will continue. Relationships are key, and those relationships include chairing of committees, as well as the Speaker of the House, the incoming Speaker, and on down the list. And the last thing is vision. You have to have vision for your community in the different pots that are available. Every year, the pots change. Every year, there's different political capital that's out there. And you have to be able to take that vision, spot the funding that's out there, integrate a plan to grab those resources, and bring it back to your community.
Holly, this is a question for you. You just heard your former boss, Bon Saunders, give a very impassioned argument as to why the 2011 legislation requiring members and participants in the Florida retirement system should not have to give 3% of their salary to contribute to their pension. Do you see eye to eye with Ron on this issue, or do you support the legislation?
worked before. Well, I actually have a personal experience with that legislation because I had my retirement cut by 3%. I had to pay into, or I had to have that, it worked out to be my grocery money monthly. And I would agree with my former boss on that, absolutely. And almost would be so bold as to liken it to an income tax because that was supposed to go into general revenue, and I believe it did not.
I'm sorry, you liken it to an income tax because it was just paid by those individuals, essentially 3% of their income. Morgan, do you support the legislation or do you support repeal of the legislation?
No, I don't support the legislation. Like Holly, obviously we didn't throw out our grocery money because it's not easy to maintain this figure. But my wife has been a state employee for the past almost 20 years. I think it was a partisan BS, and that's not bullshit, it's belief system, that our overall pension plan wasn't sturdy, it wasn't strong, and it is. And they should leave it alone, and they should pay people what they're worth, and they should leave their pensions alone.
Thank you, Morgan. 2 years ago in this room here, you were asked about your views on reproductive choice. And you said you favor a woman's right to choose. If you go to Tallahassee and your Republican leadership says this is how you will vote on this hot button issue, how will you respond to it?
That's easy. I will respond with the same thing I responded last time, and that is to take a stand for what you believe in. This isn't about Republican leadership. Obviously, this is about representing the people that are in your district. So, no matter what pressure is put on me from the top, I owe them nothing. And when I get elected, it will be because of the grassroots effort. And in this grassroots effort, what I believe is what I'll stand for.
We have gremlins tonight. What?
It's an earthquake.
Test? Okay. Holly, your campaign literature says that you would support cutting burdensome government regulation and providing our tourism industry with every advantage to attract visitors. What legislation specifically would you repeal or support repealing?
I think that continuing any kind of tax incentives would be a plus. I like the current policy of sales tax holidays. Maybe we could include those on certain big weekends, maybe on sunscreen or on fishing items or anything that would encourage tourists and locals alike to get out there and use our natural resources. I think anything that helps out our main industries, which are tourism and fishing, I would be in support of.
But doesn't the sales tax that you're talking about also support those agencies and deposit money and important funding that can be distributed perhaps more efficiently or evenly to those same industries?
It does, but I would also like to put some more focus on bigger real estate transactions or buying boats or buying homes, buying property, where the real funds for our budget come from, rather than just maybe smaller items such as sales tax holidays.
Your boss said before when he was up there, and again I get back to relationships because politics really is about relationships. You've been in Tallahassee a long time. Do you think that you have developed the same relationships that he did and connections with the various powers that be up there?
I do. I think that that's the cornerstone of my race is that I've been building bridges and building relationships with the leaders and the movers and the shakers in Tallahassee. While I've been doing that behind the scenes, I can use that same momentum to get stuff done. I'll use my experience, I'll use my contacts, and I'll use my process that I've been working in for pretty much the last dozen years or so to get things done for our community.
It's a question for Morgan. Pursuant to the rules of the House of Representatives, House members are allowed to file 6 bills every year. Have you thought about, if elected, what bills you would file in your freshman year? And if so, can you give us the benefit of what some of those would be?
Sure. First one, I would file a bill for clothing for fashion so that you can have some, no, I'm just joking. The first thing that I would do is to begin to look at this plan that I've told you about. We're going to need some legislation filed that would allow for us to differentiate in windstorm, but still participate in the Florida Cat Fund. If there is a catastrophe, we need to make sure that we can dip into those reserves and be part of it. We also are going to have to pass legislation that allows for us to create this quasi-governmental, not-for-profit insurance industry. So I would say that the vast majority of the bills that I'll be looking into in that first session would be to get this plan off the ground so that we could really stabilize and reduce our windstorm rates. I know those two specifically, you know, because that's just the beginning of what we have been told. Moving out further, there are going to be some other bills that will be filed in reference to how this windstorm pattern would fall out.
Question for Holly. A couple hot button issues. The rights of same-sex couples to marry, to adopt. Where do you stand on those, and how would you deal with the Republican leaders when they tell you to vote a certain way on that?
Thank you, Bill, and that is a hot ticket item for sure. As a member of the majority party, I think it would be pretty difficult to pass anything as such, whether it be same-sex marriage or gay adoption. However, if given the choice of a child being stuck in a system or going to two loving parents, I would have to say I would side with the loving parents. And I really ultimately believe that it's going to be a federal issue, and I don't think that it will be decided at the state level anytime soon.
But if your views differed from those of the Republican leadership, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, in my heart, I would have to say that I believe what two consenting adults do on their own time is not for me to decide.
This question is for you. You know, I asked an earlier question about voting law restrictions. Given what you know about Monroe County, because you've been dealing with your boss's constituency all this time, how do you think these regulations will impact voter registration and voter turnout specifically, and how do you feel about that legislation?
Sure, I think it's going to affect certain populations, especially maybe college students, people that tend to be transient, and possibly in the service industry. I think if your address doesn't match perfect on your driver's license, that's going to be an issue, because that's one of the forms of ID that they use. And I think, I go back to a previous speaker, that it is a fundamental right to vote. And when it comes to issues of clemency, I feel if a person has done their time and to society, and they want to get their civil rights back, and they go through the clemency process, that's only fair that we should allow them to vote. And I would hope that they would sign up to be a Republican.
This question is from Morgan. In the keynote write-up on you, I was a little bit surprised to hear them describe you as a right-wing conservative on social issues. Our paths having crossed before. And as you know, most of these issues, such as adoption and the things that Bill Becker brought up, are really National Republican party is pushing it down to a state level. The state makes those decisions. How do you feel about some of those issues that we talked about, adoption and same-sex couples and so forth?
Sure, I can tell you how exactly that happens in the keynote. When they don't give you a phone call, they don't have a questionnaire, and there's no conversation, then it's hard to get to know somebody where they stand. But ultimately, I think that when it comes to adoption, it's about love. We can't determine who starts loving a heart and stops loving a heart. And so why should we try to legislate? So I think it's very important for us to allow the individual that's out there that has the heart to raise a child, to raise a child. I mean, you know, there's 4 of them that I'm just joking. I'm not giving my tip away, but it's not easy to raise children, and it takes a lot of an investment. And I believe that that should be extended to those that want to make that type of commitment. In regards to gay marriage, I think it's very important that individuals that love each other have the ability to not be taxed and taken from like we do now. That their assets should be protected. That they should be able to pass those assets on, and the government shouldn't be able to come in and take them from them. In regards to the ability to make medical decisions, absolutely, they should be able to make medical decisions for the person they love. So, like I said, it's not about Tallahassee or me being too far to the right or too far to the left. It's truly about doing your best to be a representative or representative of those who elect you.
Follow up real quickly on that question, Morgan, and then I have a question for Holly. A couple of years ago, I asked you this question, and both you and Representative Saunders answered it the same way, so I'll ask you. It's a social question, and it touches on what you just said. Should a doctor be able to prescribe for his or her patient medicinal marijuana?
Absolutely. As a pastor and as a member of the community, I have walked a number of individuals through the terrible travesty of cancer, and it was something that allowed for them to have an appetite. So on a personal level, I've seen this, I've experienced it, and I would support medicinal marijuana absolutely.
Holly, in the past 5 years, the Florida budget has gone from about $86 billion to about $71 billion. Under what circumstances, if any, would you support additional taxes or other revenues to pay for state infrastructure?
I would find it difficult to support any new taxes. I would like to say I would support no new taxes. There was one idea that I was floating around, and that would be to put a tax on bottled water, because it's a luxury, I believe. We all grew up without bottled water, and we all survived. And if you think about the amount of bottled water people drink, but I think it would be safe to say, as a Republican, I would not support any new taxes at all.
Morgan. Last question. If you could change one thing about yourself to make yourself a better candidate, a better representative, what would you change?
My height or weight. I would like to be a little taller and a little lighter. I think that anybody that runs for office runs on ideals, runs on what they believe in. And I thank God that I was born in America, that I was raised in the Conch Republic, and I have the right and the ability to run for those things which I believe in. And I think that's very important, and this time is very important. Whether it's education, whether it's windstorm, ultimately, if things don't change, this place that I call paradise, that I have 4 little conchs and conchettes, I guess if they are, won't be able to enjoy. And so, if I could change something, like I said, Bill, it would be my height and weight.
Okay, guys, thank you.